All right, so what kind of homes can you get in Calgary for around $1 million? Well, the good news is if you're moving here from somewhere else, especially if you're coming from, say, Ontario or maybe out in Vancouver, you're going to come to Calgary and go, wow, there is a lot of choice for around $1 million. And that's a great news if you're coming from those markets. Maybe if you're coming from either Saskatchewan or Winnipeg or Montreal or maybe even Halifax, you might look at it and go, well, it's still a little pricey compared to what I'm used to. So everyone has a little bit of a different perspective as to the value you get for $1 million. But the bottom line is you'd still have a pretty reasonable choice here in Calgary. Now, keep in mind, our inventory is kind of at an all-time low. We have been a little lower in 2006, but we're hovering around some pretty low inventory levels here. So, the choice right now is what I would say not normal. That's why we're in more of a seller's market in Calgary. But that being said, let's look on the positive side. There still is a reasonably good amount of choice out there. And I can tell you this, if you were to go and look at the market right now, and say you went out and started looking at some homes or even like physically going out and seeing them, plus, the ones you're seeing online, and maybe, for the area that you wanted to be in, you didn't see what you like and you were gonna be, maybe got a little disappointed, don't worry about that, because you have to remember something. Every single day, there's new buyers and new sellers that come in and out of the market. So inventory is changing daily. So in this video though, I'm going to walk you through the different kinds of homes that you can get in various different locations around the city for the $1 million budget. Now, $1 million is still considered luxury in Calgary, and you can get into every quadrant of the city in Calgary with $1 million budget. So you have to really decide what area of the city you want to be in and what kind of property actually works for you. So let's talk about properties that are, first of all, close to downtown and specifically infills. So these are properties known for, the old bungalows were tore down, and then either two detached homes were put in place or semi-detached were put in place. And I can tell you, I've been in a lot of these, and I own a property in Altadore, so really familiar with that infill market around Altadore. And there's some beautiful homes. I mean, you're going to find yourself getting into properties that are, anywhere from 2,200 to 3,000 square feet. They're going to be 2 stories. They're going to have finished basements, and you're going to find some pretty nice finishes in that $1 million range. I'd say pretty nice. I mean, you can definitely go up higher than that, and of course the finishes can get really luxurious. But the trade-off is, of course, you're going to have a smaller backyard. So you're going to have the location. You'll not have much of a yard, but you're going to be in the inner city. You're going to have mature trees. You're going to have transit. You're going to have amenities. You're going to have shopping, and you can get downtown within 15 minutes. And you can get yourself into a semi-detached or a detached, and there's quite a bit of choice when it comes to those properties. So that would definitely be a consideration if you want to be close to downtown. Now, there are other properties too, depending on which community, and you have to keep this in mind, because a lot of the homes in, say, areas like Altadore or Capitol Hill or Bridgeland or Renfrew, a lot of these have R2 lots, and so when the bungalows start to get pretty dated, they tend to come down and then replaced with these new homes. But then you can go into neighborhoods that are more of an R1 type of dwelling, like, say, for example, Banff Trail, or you get up into Brentwood up in the northwest. These type of areas, you can't tear down the old house. All you can do is improve the old one, and that's what's happening. Or in some cases, they just literally rip out the old house and just build one new one, but you're not seeing 2. You're just getting one single dwelling on top of that property. So you'll see a lot of these areas, a lot of these homes have been remodeled. And interestingly enough, I was just in one recently, and it's in North Glenmore Park, and you'll see some beautiful bungalows in there, not really big, but the location is stellar. Lakeview is another one of those properties, or another one of those communities as well, where you'll see some of these older bungalows, and they've been completely gutted and remodeled, and they're pushing the $1 million price point. And you're not getting a lot of square footage here, but you are once again getting, the location. You're getting a phenomenal backyard. You're getting big mature trees, and you're living, in those cases, close to the reservoir, which is absolutely amazing, and still really close to downtown. So if you really want, something like an older bungalow, or there might even be a renovated 2-story, it could even be a 4-level split that's completely gutted and renovated, you can get into some of these. And I know sometimes people say to me, well, Rob, aren't these older properties, is it really worth putting all that money in? The foundation is really old. You got to remember something. These foundations go a long time, and you can even improve them when you're doing the remodel. And most of these houses, they've had literally gutted. I mean, we're talking new plumbing, new wiring, new everything. So it really does feel like a brand new home. So I think if you want to be somewhere reasonably close to downtown or along the C train line, there are some absolutely amazing older communities that offer this. Okay, now you get into some other homes that were maybe built around, say the late 70s, even into the 80s, in some cases into the 90s. And we're seeing a lot of these homes remodeled too. Or even some of them, the location is still pretty good and the square footage is pretty high, that they're commanding close to $1 million, and they still haven't been renovated. But neighborhoods, like Edgemont or Hawkwood up in the northwest, or go down to Woodlands, down in the southwest. These areas, these kind of communities, you can see some pretty nice big 2-stories that have all been remodeled, and they're beautiful. And so now you're getting a little further away from the core, and what you're getting is more square footage, right? So you're going to get a pretty decent sized yard, but you're also going to get, into I'd say anywhere from 2,200 square feet, maybe up to 3,000 square feet as well for a 2-story, and of course 2-car garage, and probably a finished basement. So that's a pretty common trend, and you'll see when you start looking at that $1 million budget, you'll see a lot of these communities. Scenic Acres is another one that comes to mind. Silver Springs is another one that comes to mind. There's really a whole host of them that are R1 dwellings, so you only can have one house on it, but maybe newer homes. I mean, even some of them that have been built in the 90s that have been completely remodeled with walkout basements. So they're still older houses, but again, they've been remodeled, and a lot of times the floor plan has even been improved. Because I will say this, some of these homes that were built in Calgary in the late 70s into the mid 80s, I don't know what went on with some of these developers back then. I think maybe the architects just got really tired of just building the same thing over and over again, because there's some pretty wild floor plans when you see the late 70s into the mid 80s, and they're really chopped up, or they just got a kind of a wonky look to them. Small kitchens back then was common. I've seen some with the galley kitchen that was tiny, and yet they had a big, formal living room plus a family room. Nowadays, most of us want to see a really good sized kitchen, and we don't always necessarily have to have a formal living room and a formal dining room. Having that large kitchen space seems to be more important. So you'll see some of these homes now have all been remodeled, and it's brought the price up. That's why they're pushing that $1 million price range. But you're still going to be in an older community, so you're still going to have good amenities, which I like. And of course, it's going to have easy access to the C train, or maybe out to Stony Trail to get out into the mountains, or down in the south, it's probably going to be close to Fish Creek Park. Like I mentioned, Woodlands is a nice area. So that's one of the beautiful things about looking at some of these older homes. And don't forget those mature trees, because none of the newer neighborhoods in Calgary have really good mature trees. That's just that's just how it is for Calgary. All right, so now we've got maybe the newer homes. When I say newer, I mean mostly that was built in the 2000s. And of course, now you're going to be further away from the core, so you could get into places like Sherwood up in the north, for example, or Nolan Hill, or Sagewood up in the north. Carrington is another good area for some of these newer homes that are big. Again, Rocky Ridge, Royal Oak, down in the south. You could be down even in Legacy, or you could be down in the southeast into some of the lake communities like Auburn Bay or Mahogany. I mean, there is a lot of newer communities in Calgary. I mean, there's just too many to mention on this video. You're going to find yourself, if you're spending $1 million, you're going to get a lot of house, all right? You will get quite a bit of square footage. You shouldn't have any trouble, pushing 2,500 square feet or bigger. I was even in a property in Aspen Woods recently that, was worth about $1 million. It was built in 2013, just a little bit dated. The only thing is you have to accept with some of these newer communities that are, they are really nice communities. I'll give a lot of credit to some of these developers. They've done a great job in Calgary of really making some of these newer communities walkable, really pet friendly, family oriented. I mean, they've done a great job of that. But the one thing that's challenging, I think, is the fact that the houses are very close together and you don't get a really big backyard. So you get the square footage, you just don't have a really massive backyard. So, there's always a trade-off when it comes to real estate. There's pros and cons to every decision that you do make. But I think for the people that do like these newer homes, like I mentioned earlier, you do get the size. You get, the floor plans are a lot newer, they're open, you get the big kitchen, so you have the convenience of the beautiful kitchen cabinets and newer appliances, and the fact that the house is newer, so there's less likely of anything going wrong, so you have to factor that in too. So that's really, I think, what draws a lot of people to some of these newer communities. And if you're looking in a $1 million budget, you could also find some beautiful homes in the Northeast as well that are close to the airport. And there's some really upper scale homes there that have walkout basements, maybe even backing onto green space, or you could even be in Coral Lake that's got some homes that are on the lake that are close to that price range, not too far off. It's not feasible to get into something backing onto the lake just for $1 million in any other lake community. So you have to realize that if you're looking at something around being on a lake, but you can definitely be in one of those lake communities for around $1 million and still have a pretty nice property. I know when I mentioned Mahogany, that's one of my favorite newer developments, just because Hopewell did such a phenomenal job at creating that community. It's very, very walkable, and it just has everything, and that lake is just so fantastic on how they built it. And I think even the homes there, I really like even the elevations in the exterior. And that's one of the things that I do like about some of the newer areas too, is you're moving away from the vinyl siding, so you're getting more into composite or hardy board and acrylic stucco, which I think really enhances the look of the neighborhood and makes it look really, really expansive. So that's one of the things that I do like about some of those neighborhoods as well. They do have a lot of architectural controls, just keep in mind. So that's a restrictive covenant on title, and that's actually going to protect you from your neighbor painting their house some strange color. And that is something to factor in, because the older neighborhoods quite often don't have a restrictive covenant. So your neighbor could paint it, a pink color if they wanted to. There's nothing to stop them from doing that. I don't think most people would, but it could happen, because I have seen some wonky colors the odd time in some of these older neighborhoods. So that gives you a really good difference for, or at least a good idea of what you can expect to see for around $1 million in Calgary. I think that to end this video, the most important thing to remember is there is a lot of choice. And if you're working with a professional that really understands the real estate market and can sit with you and get an understanding of your lifestyle and what's important to you, it's really easy to narrow down which communities are probably going to work best for you. And then of course you just focus your efforts on that and you're able to find the right house. So do me a favor, if you found this video really helpful, do me a huge favor, give it the thumbs up and like my video. You can subscribe and you can even hit the bell button and be notified when I do the next one.